Knew like, I'm not going to be able to kill my opponent here. I'm just going to take an advantage and force a reaction. And played very solid. I feel like I couldn't find any weaknesses to his opening.
That's exactly right. It's more so that I think Hwangsin made the really weird choice to go 3-gate expand into Robo. I mean, I think what's better if you want to do some play like that is TT1's 1-gate expansion. I think that's like far superior than the 3-gate expansion because you're still dying.
I feel like you delay your tech so much when you go 3-gate and you expand.
Yeah, you're still dying to the majority of different tech plays. I mean, aggressive Immortals can be really, really good on that. So.
Yeah.
It's hard to stop 3-gate Robo plays. Like if you go for very, very aggressive Warp Prison plays. It's hard to stop, as we said, Blink. Not really Stargate, but you don't see Stargate on Muspelheim. 1-gate Stargate just because of how big it is. You invest in all of this gas into Phoenixes, and then you fly like so far away to kill like a single probe. It's like, oh, well, that's not worth it. Anyway, let's talk about these two players and first introduce them. Top right-hand position, we have Gosu Hwangsin as the blue Protoss. He's down 0-1 against this player. In the bottom right, this Dignitas Bischu, who's spawning as the yellow Protoss.
Yeah, guys, this is Entombed Valley, which is a map that's a little bit hard to secure your expansion initially, but actually because of that, some people, they don't necessarily go for high aggression. I know it sounds really counterintuitive, but like people like Robo expand on this map, like with the Immortal expand. I know when Naniwa was here, he was talking to us a lot about like going Immortals on this map because it just I don't know how to explain it necessarily, but the ramp control is very strong because there's not much surface area you can get, and the concave is ridiculous. If you set it up across the natural ledge, you can get lots of surface area, and it's surprisingly effective. So we've seen people go for Robo expands. We've seen people go Stargate in response to Robo expands and punish them.
Yeah, you don't really see Blink Stalker all that often just because of its immobility, I want to say.
You can't force yourself up the ramp either.
Yeah.
Like, it's really tough. So with Blink being bad, then I don't know. I think the Immortal expand is really good.
Yeah, it's normally Immortal expand or some sort of like counter metagame, which was of course the Stargate play as you were just mentioning.
It was cool because I remember players like Huck knew that people liked the Robo expand, and he as a result went charge Archon all in off one base with DTs, and then was able to bust a wide ramp and then punish people because of it. And you only had Sentry Immortal, which is actually laughably bad against Zealots. So, if you don't have force fields, you just get completely demolished. So there was like that weird, cool dynamic. But now Entombed Valley is stabilized a lot more. What do you like to see on this map, Andre?
I like to see expansions. I like to see Mortal Sentry expansions, actually.
With transitioning into carriers.
Even though we've like talked about the whole beginning on how Immortal Sentry can be countered by specific compositions, I still think that it's one of the best ones against the wide majority of builds that you can actually do. But what are we saying? Okay, robotics facility going down. Okay, Hwangsin actually said to me, we were talking about like counter maps and what he would pick in case he lost game number 1, because we were trying to figure out a map in which Bischu was very predictable, and I was saying Ohana, he does kind of the same stuff. He likes to go Blink stuff on Ohana. So we were like, oh yeah, do Ohana. And he goes, no, Entombed Valley.
Oh,
I'm
wow.
Like, why Entombed Valley? And he's like, oh, I have really good builds on Entombed Valley.
This is Hwangsin's being very aggressive early on with just a few units and really punishing Bischu for going for a very quick Stargate. And now Hwangsin has full information. This is kind of like a little bit take on Rotterdam's build in PvP of getting very early aggression with gateway units to scout your opponent. As long as you can trade it out, maybe even save the Stalker, then all of a sudden it's worth it. Hwangsin going for the home run, trying to squeeze out that last Stalker kill.
Oh, so close.
He got that. That would have been very effective.
1 hit point away, Frodan.
Really?
Oh my gosh, if he attacked a little bit earlier, he would have gotten it because the shields wouldn't have recharged.
Like if this Stalker somehow tripped on a pylon, it would have died as well. This is flimsiest Stalker ever.
But he saw the Stargate. He also saw that the Stargate wasn't operating for quite a long time, and he knows a lot of economic damage is done. So I think Hwangsin, he's just going to go from here to Twilight Council, which seems weird, but get that Blink out, and he's probably, well, he could pressure. He could also go for an expansion. Either of the two. I mean, it just is stylistic. I think Hwangsin is the type of player that's actually going to put pressure on his opponent, but you never know.
Yeah. Hwangsin, meanwhile, I mean, he knows his opponent's tech, so he has to play very conservative at this point. The idea of Phoenix is that you control the map, you can kind of continue to harass their probe count and expand, or you can use the Phoenixes to disable your opponent and go for huge aggression. Bischu doesn't have the 4 gates, though, so I'm not necessarily if he wants to necessarily really commit to this rather than just kind of whittle down his opponent's tech. Hwangsin also is going for Blink, does force field the ramp, but that's kind of what I was talking about. The Phoenixes can just kind of disable your ability to protect your ramp. And just like that, Bischu gets out with free trades.
That's right. But Blink is on the way. That'll help out quite a bit. Additional Phoenixes are coming in here, and this, as we know, it's going to be a big all-in from Bischu. And will Hwangsin be able to stop this? That's really tough to actually say. I mean, the fact of the matter is there's a lot of Phoenixes out in the field.
Yeah.
So they can just pick up and disable rather than trying to do something.
This is what you needed to do, clever. But Hwangsin was not able to wall off in time. The Immortal gets disabled. He does have Blink in just a couple seconds, so it's going to be really tough for Bischu to be able to handle that, but he does have a lot of Phoenix energy. Imagine if you just lift up all the Stalkers and force kind of like a 3 Stalker, 2 Zealots against what he has. It's a pretty fair fight, and I think if Bischu micros this really well, he still should be able to do it. At the same time, he is already placing a robotics facility, thinking about transitioning, and I think maybe knowing Bischu, he might just try to pick off what he can and call it quits.
And he's going to show the Blink. The Blink is actually so powerful in this situation, but Hwangsin still needs to be a little bit careful because there's a lot of burst potential from Bischu. With all the lifts, that's 5 lifts, that's 5 Stalkers that he can actually just completely segment out of the battle. But no, I think Bischu's just going to back up from here, knowing that it's impossible for him to really push and try to break that ramp. I mean, the SimCity is just way too good. Now that Blink is up, he can actually do some really, really nice tricks with the residual army he has after some sort of potential liftoff from those Phoenixes.
This is so funny, too, because Hwangsin thinks that Bischu is expanding, but he's not. But yeah, Bischu has his Robo almost done, and he's going to start pushing out his own Immortals as well. So Bischu playing the mind games even more. Especially since he stopped making Phoenix production. So this is all the signs that tell Hwangsin, you know, I think I'm just going to try to harass, if the Phoenix does get picked off there, and try to see if I can just maintain map control while making sure that I build a huge army and expand. But at the same time, Hwangsin's going to scout and see, well, there's no Expo. Uh-oh.
1 base all in.
1 base all in.
And he sees the Immortal and he's like, oh, you went Stargate and then to Robo? Okay. Well...
Yeah.
How does he receive it? And that's a big question. He has a ton of Stalkers, by the way. What he can do is actually try to pick up all the Phoenixes, and then after all the warp-ins, or excuse me, after all the Phoenixes die, you can actually warp in Sentries. And with Sentries and Force Shields and Blink Stalkers, you can actually fend off a lot. Like, it's a lot more cost-efficient than normal.
I have a question, Andre. Does Guardian Shield reduce the damage of the Phoenixes when they're lifting something up in Graviton Beam?
Yes, it does.
Really? Huh. So like it reduces 2 damage per shot of the Phoenix, so effectively it reduces it by 4?
Yes.
If it's a light unit?
It's a light unit.
Huh. Well, that's some interesting math. We'll see if that ever comes into play.
Or even if it's not a light unit.
Oh, that is yeah, actually, that's really curious. I want to see how that works out, and maybe if he pops the Guardian Shield and is able to save some units, that would be really cool. Meanwhile, Bischu is going for a Colossus as well, and adding on another gateway. Man, this is a 1 base of all 1 base. He's even sending some probes to mine long distance.
I'd love him to actually throw down a fleet beacon. That would be the craziest thing ever. Just see a fleet beacon.
Wait, why?
There's one.
Just for the Phoenix range?
One base mothership, man.
Oh, I thought you wanted to get the
extend
Phoenix range, and then like, I don't know, lift up a sentry and be able to like snipe it while running away almost. I don't know, that'd be so crazy.
Imagine if he just somehow gets a Tempest with 22 range. He's like,
hey man, I know
LOL.
this game isn't this is not in the game yet, but I'm gonna win with the Tempest. Actually, Rotterdam and I have tested the Tempest out so much extensively in PvP, and we've decided that you can't win with it unless you're super far ahead. It's like that carrier of 2010, where you can't win with carriers unless you're super far ahead. And that was like everyone's train of thought back in the day.
Yeah, and you know, to an extent, carriers are kind of like that still, but I guess people are kind of incorporating it a little bit more here and there.
I think late game
PvZ,
PvZ,
yeah. That's where it really speaks.
What about late game PvP, Andre?
Late game PvP, it's the most imbalanced thing you could possibly do. It's just people don't get there.
Well, we'll see how well these guys can fare off. I mean, these are one of the scenarios where it's like there's no real follow-up plan for Bischu because he's just way too far behind otherwise. Hwangsin will have 2 bases. He's got 4 gases compared to his opponent if he can harvest from them. Bischu, he's pulling all the pros! And he says, you know what, man? I'm all in. And all I can think about is that Speed Stick commercial like, oh, this is bad. This is bad. I'm all in. But this is not bad because it's Bischu we're talking about. He's got great control. And if he does this correctly, who knows? Is Hwangsin gonna? No, he's not gonna base trade. You know, he's gonna go back and defend. He's got Immortals. He's trying to make sure that he can get into a good position as well. But Hwangsin has a lot of Stalkers.
It's a little bit dicey right now. I'm not gonna lie.
Really
4,000 to 4,000. But the fact of the matter is, there's a lot of Stalkers in this army composition for Hwangsin, and not for his opponent. And these Zealots are pretty slow, so it's gonna be a little bit difficult to actually keep up.
Here we go. Bischu by Bischu. He's pushing in. Probes actually going in front of the Zealots and trying to tank, but some of them are also preventing them from being able to get DPS. The two Colossus are adding a lot of DPS, but the Stalkers are blinking in a very nice position. All of a sudden, it's very tough for the Zealots and Probes to get their DPS in, but Bischu's flank has been able to hold. The Immortal has 5 Stalker kills. The blink forward from Hwangsin is going to be very tight, but in the end, Hwangsin holds GG. And Hwangsin ties up the series, man. What a game. What a set of series we've had today, man. Just like, there's nothing. I just feel like we've been very blessed by people who are willing to do wacky things. Whatever it takes to win, man. Pull the probes, why not? There's no follow-up plan. Not like the, well, I lost, I'm going to try to expand from this point on.
I just want to let you know that that exact game, not quite the progression, but that exact game happened in our practice matches, where I went Zealot Stalker
where
and then Stargate.
Where you pulled all your probes?
No.
Okay.
Zealot Stalker and Stargate. And I was like, how are you going to actually punish this? And we went over it, and he's like, oh, I need to be a little bit more aggressive in the beginning. And that's why he actually chrono boosts out the Stalkers to begin with, just so he can get that scout. And that's what actually justifies him whether or not to really commit with the 2-gate Immortal and go Sentry Immortal, or if he should back off and switch over to something like Blink Stalker.
All I can think about is the Zealots and Hwangsin that sees all the probes and Zealots, and they're like, we cannot hold. And then he holds. Right? That's like the scumbag Zealot. Says he cannot hold, he holds.